Dear daughter, I am writing this because there is a phrase that may sound sweet, but carries a weight that few realize. I care about you. This gentle sound has the ability to transform any moment into a sea of confusion. The day I heard it, I was at home, oblivious to my own desires. He looked into my eyes and said, I care about you. The tone was soft, almost paternal. But deep down, something changed. A small detail that seemed harmless. The way he tilted his head. It was as if he was weighing the value of my choices. My mind started to spin. The concern had a disguised urgency. I felt like I was being pushed into a corner. It was at that moment I realized. It wasn't love. It was control disguised as affection. This isn't protection, I thought. It's a trap. Here's the rule I learned, and I want you to listen carefully. The signal. Whenever you hear I care, pay attention to whether the concerns are about your feelings or about the actions you take. The translation. Concern often means, I want you to do what I think is best. The boundary. When someone uses concern as a justification to control your decisions, respond clearly. I understand your point of view, but I will follow my own path. If you remember one thing, remember this. Care is not always love, and if you ever feel pressured to justify your independence, know that you owe no explanations. You are free to be who you are without worrying about pleasing someone who confuses love with possessiveness. When I said I would follow my own path, he hesitated. Silence enveloped the space, and his expression changed. The eyes that once seemed concerned now carried a shadow, a moment of doubt, perhaps, or a spark of disguised anger. In that instant, I realized that control was more subtle than I had imagined. It was like a dance, where every movement I made was closely watched. I found myself questioning my own reality. Am I being dramatic? I wondered. He only cares about me. But that phrase, so common, had already lost its charm. The sweetness had turned bitter, and I was caught in a dilemma that many face, the line between genuine love and silent possessiveness. I remember the first time I felt that pressure. I was excited about a job opportunity, something that could change my future. When I shared the news, the excitement in my heart was quickly stifled by the shadow of his concern. But what if it doesn't work out? What if you're not good enough? The words came out like a cold fog, suffocating my enthusiasm. It was then that I realized that the constant concern wasn't an expression of love, but a way to keep me small. Once, when I was out with friends, he sent me endless messages. Where are you? Who are you with? As if the freedom I sought was a threat to his control. The joy of being surrounded by people was no longer enough. My laughter turned into dissatisfaction, and my social life became a series of commitments I felt I needed to justify. And then, on a night of fervor, I finally confronted this dynamic. We sweated under the lights of the room, and the tension rose like hot smoke. You don't trust me, I said, the words slipping out in a thread of frustration. He defended himself, saying, It's because I care about you. I want you to be safe. That was when the epiphany struck. The protection that was presented as love was, in fact, creating a cage for me. The idea of safety was tied to a need for control and possession, a manipulation wrapped in affection. The invisible chains he used were built on promises of care. On that day, something inside me snapped. I didn't want to live in fear of his anxiety anymore. I no longer wanted to make choices based on his perception of safety. I started to notice what I had left behind, my ambitions, my forgotten dreams, the parts of myself that I hid to keep the peace. The weight of expectation, of obligation, now felt like a straitjacket. The cycle was clear. Every time I tried to be myself, there was a response that pulled me back. The feeling of unworthiness intertwined with the idea that I needed to manage his emotions to be valid. The internal struggle was tumultuous. On one side, the growing courage to break free. On the other, the habit of seeking approval, of adapting to his needs. The next conversation was different. I confronted him with a racing heart, but I was prepared. Instead of apologizing, I asked for space. I need to figure out who I am outside of this relationship. The words came out, heavy, but necessary. The transformation I desired required courage, and in that moment of vulnerability, I realized that true freedom is often found in an act of rebellion against what confines us. His response was not what I expected. Silence returned, but it was no longer oppressive. There was a silent understanding, even if it was painful. I was pulling away, and that scared him. But I realized that the only way to truly love someone is to first learn to love yourself. Now, dear daughter, understand that true love does not fear freedom. It does not demand that you choose between being yourself and pleasing someone else. Love should be a celebration of individuality, not its annihilation. If anyone ever uses your worries as a weapon, know that you are not alone. There is a world full of voices that speak the truth. If you remember one thing, remember this. Worry is not always love. Sometimes, it can just be a well-disguised trap. Do not let it stop you from shining. You deserve a love that does not diminish you but helps you grow. Remember, you are free to be who you really are, without excuses. The silence, now light as a breeze, allowed me to see clearly what had previously been hidden. As I distanced myself, I realized it wasn't just him who was changing. I was transforming too. The pain of the unknown, mixed with the excitement of discovering parts of myself that had been dormant. It was like opening a window in a dusty room and letting the light in. The following days were an emotional roller coaster. Each new decision was a challenge. There were moments when fear tried to creep in, whispering that I had made a mistake. But at the same time, there was a stronger voice, an echo of the courage beginning to resonate within me. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman ready to face the world, not as someone torn apart by the control of another, but as someone claiming her space. Still, the ghost of worry did not disappear. The ghost of worry did not. It was there, hidden in the messages arriving late at night, the missed calls, the promises that everything would be okay, as long as I just followed his instructions. Sometimes, I found myself hesitating, reliving those moments when his eyes seemed to carry the entire weight of responsibility for my happiness. The dilemma echoed in my mind. Was I being selfish by prioritizing my well-being? On a cloudy afternoon, while walking through a park, I noticed a group of young people laughing and playing. Their joy overflowed, almost contagious. A part of me wanted to approach them, to integrate into that freedom, but another part still struggled against the invisible chains. Feelings of guilt arose, like shadows trying to extinguish the light that was finally beginning to shine. The reality is that I had nurtured the desire to please so much that I had forgotten what truly made me happy. The little things that used to bring me joy, dancing alone in the living room, painting, writing long letters that no one would read except for me, had been silenced. The simple act of breathing and being myself became subversive. Yet here I was, witnessing life pulsate around me, full of possibilities. I decided to take small steps. Instead of ignoring the messages, I started responding honestly. I'm out with friends, and I'm happy, I wrote once, my heart racing. The silence that followed was deafening, but the feeling of freedom growing inside me was much louder. I noticed that each time I affirmed my independence, something within me grew stronger, like a plant breaking through the surface of the soil in search of light. Then a new opportunity arose, a chance to travel, an old dream that had been bubbling inside me. The thought of going made me feel alive again, but the fear of his reaction lingered, like a pair of cold hands gripping my heart. I needed to approach this carefully, but firmly. That night, when I faced the situation, I took a deep breath and said, I want to go. I want to see the world and have this experience. The air stopped between us. He remained quiet. Silence returned, but it was different. It was heavy with expectation, but also with a new understanding. I was changing, and he had to decide whether he would keep up or not. He took a deep breath, and I could sense the tension in his shoulders. You know I care about you, he said slowly, as if weighing each word. I don't want you to get hurt. And there it was, that old trick wrapped in care and concern. But instead of yielding, I held my ground. I understand, but I need to do this for me. I can't live with these chains. His expression changed. I saw a mixture of anger and confusion contort his features. But inside, I felt a growing strength. You need to let me be who I am, I said, my voice trembling, but my words were firm. And then, a subtle shift occurred. Instead of frustration, I caught a glimpse of acceptance. A silent acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, he would have to let go. His internal struggle unfolded before me, and suddenly I realized that our battle was not just between us, but also within him. He was grappling with his own fears, his insecurities. In the following days, the tension gradually dissipated, like morning fog. The space I had claimed began to create openings for deeper conversations. We started discussing what it meant to love someone without losing yourself. And although there were still challenges, the suffocating weight that once occupied our relationship was no longer there. I learned that true love means space. Space to grow, to be who you are. Love should not demand that you choose. You are free, and you should always be. Now, dear daughter, when you look into the eyes of someone who claims to care for you, pay attention. Ask yourself, does this care allow me to be who I am, or does it push me into a box? Love is an invitation to freedom, not a trap to ensnare your essence. And remember, disguised concerns can be toxic, but the truth is a powerful remedy. You deserve a love that expands your horizons, not one that narrows them. The connection that was beginning to form between us was fragile, like a silk thread amid a storm of emotions. The tension still lingered in the air, but there was a new understanding, a delicate dance between the desire to control and the need for freedom. But even so, I felt the need to push my limits in a more intense way. One calm afternoon, I decided to go for a walk alone. The sunlight filtered through the leaves of the trees, creating patterns of shadow and light on the ground. Each step was an affirmation of who I was becoming. I chose to head to a cafe I used to frequent, a place that held memories of laughter and confessions. When I arrived, the atmosphere was warm and familiar. People were chatting animatedly, and as I heard their voices, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. Yet, at the same time, a new strength blossomed within me. I sat at a table near the window, allowing the light to warm my face. I looked around, observing the interactions. A couple in the back was laughing, exchanging knowing glances. A woman sitting alone at the next table was writing in a journal, completely unaware of the world around her. It was as if everyone there was living their truth while I was searching for mine. It was then that I realized something. The fear that once paralyzed me began to seem small compared to the desire to live fully. The idea of being free wasn't just about escaping an emotional trap. It was about embracing life in its entirety. Sometimes that meant feeling pain and disappointment. Sometimes it meant facing the unknown. As I sipped my coffee, a sharp thought crossed my mind. What if I'm not enough? This insecurity, a remnant of our relationship, still insisted on visiting me. But with each sip, I pushed it away. I chose to believe I could be more than he expected, more than I expected of myself. With this new perspective, I began to reflect on all the times I set aside my true desires, seeking his approval, in moments when I gave up going to parties, meeting friends, or making plans, always justifying it as doing what was best for us. Now, I looked back with a critical eye. Those decisions were made under the pressure of someone who confused love with control. That night, as we returned home, there was a heavy silence between us. He knew I was changing, but the nature of that change was an unknown to him. As I sat beside him on the couch, I felt the electric energy in the air. He broke the silence first. Do you really think you can do everything on your own now? His tone was challenging, but there was a hint of vulnerability. I just want to figure out who I am, I replied firmly, and that may include being alone, without feeling like I need to justify every step. He hesitated, half confused, half defensive. The conversation took an unexpected turn. For a brief moment, I saw a spark of understanding in his eyes. It was an internal struggle, I could see. He wanted to protect me, but the protection was becoming a burden. I was filled with the courage to continue, aware that this was a turning point. Love isn't control, I continued. Love is understanding that we are both individuals. I can't live under the shadows of your fear, and you can't control how I seek happiness. There was something powerful in my words, a certainty I hadn't felt before. With each syllable, I was unveiling a part of myself that had been hidden, a part that was tired of being merely a reflection of his expectations. The silence that followed was heavy with raw, unfiltered truth. Eventually, he responded, I don't know how to handle this. I worry about you, and that's hard for me. His words were shaded by a mix of anger and sadness. I understood that worry wasn't just a trap. It was also a source of insecurity for him. That revelation affected me deeply. I didn't want him to feel this way, but I needed to be clear. I understand, but life isn't about guarantees, I said, my heart feeling softer. I have my fears too, but I don't need them to move forward. The truths were laid out on the table now, exposed. The following days were filled with constant ups and downs. He tried to adapt, but the old dynamics didn't fade away so easily. In a heated argument, he shot back, "If you go out with them, how will you know if you're making the right choice?" His frustration fueled his desire for change, but change required effort. And even so, it was painful to see him struggling. There was a genuine love behind his concern, but it was mixed with possessiveness. Gradually, I realized that this battle wasn't just ours. It mirrored patterns many face: how to love someone without losing oneself. The challenge now was to find a space where we could talk, where trust could flourish. He was willing to try, and I was willing to be honest. We created a new space for conversation, where both sides could express their needs and honor each other's individuality. We began to explore the idea of free love. The concept started to resonate in our interactions. It wasn't easy, but there was a beauty in allowing ourselves to make mistakes, in being imperfect, and above all, human. In those moments, love became a path of mutual growth, not a prison. Over time, I learned to trust that someone's true concern should allow the other to soar, not keep them trapped in a cage. Somewhere along this journey, we lost ourselves and found each other again. The struggle for the freedom to be who we are became an act of love greater than all our fears combined. So, dear daughter, whenever you hear those weighty words, remember that love is more than just worry. It's the allowance to be yourself, without excuses.